Welcome back to this explainer. Today we're going to dive into one of the most fascinating and honestly kind of hilarious ironies in gaming history. You know, when we look at the rich lore of a game versus the crazy mechanics that players actually exploit, there is often this massive disconnect. And nowhere is that more obvious than in Dark Souls. We're going to explore the Painted World of Ariamis and uncover exactly how a realm that was specifically designed to be this quiet, beautiful refuge was completely transformed by players into an industrialized zone of endless execution.
Okay, let's kick things off with this famous quote. "This land is peaceful, its inhabitants kind." Now, keep that line in the back of your mind, because it's going to serve as the ultimate punchline for our entire analysis today. When you finally reach the heart of the Painted World, you're greeted by Crossbreed Priscilla. And unlike almost everything else in Dark Souls, she doesn't immediately try to kill you. Instead, she offers this gentle reassurance. She genuinely believes that the snowy domain she watches over is a safe haven. But as you'll see, player behavior drastically contradicts this very sentiment.
So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start by looking at the outcast inside the painting, move into her peaceful but deadly encounter, break down the actual mechanics of soul farming, see how players exploit the Painted World, and finish up with the infamous pyromancy phalanx farm.
Starting with Section 1, the outcast in the painting. To really appreciate the irony of what players do here, we first have to understand why this icy prison even exists in the first place. Let's talk about Priscilla. As a crossbreed, she's a half-dragon. But her draconic lineage wasn't even the main issue. It was the fact that her body was naturally infused with occult power. We are talking about an inherent power that is literally capable of killing gods. Because of this life-hunting nature, the reigning gods of Anor Londo were absolutely terrified of her. They viewed her as a complete abomination, an existence that was just entirely taboo.
And this brilliantly highlights her tragic reality. She isn't a villain at all. She's just a sympathetic outcast offering refuge to other forgotten souls. The gods went to extreme lengths just to hide her away. They confined her in the undead asylum first, and eventually banished her into a magical painting created by someone named Ariamis. They even assigned a dedicated order of painting guardians to protect the canvas from the outside. Inside, Anor Londo used the painting as a dumping ground for dangerous artifacts, sinners, and hollows. But Priscilla, she actually views herself as the protector of these outcasts. She pities the inhabitants because the outside world hated them just as much as it hated her.
Which brings us to Section 2, a peaceful but deadly encounter. Because of course, as players, we usually come in and completely disrupt this piece. The way the game handles your interaction with her is incredibly unique.
Here is the crucial point. She will absolutely not attack you unless you provoke her first. When you walk through her fog gate, she just diplomatically asks you to leave. She tells you to go plunge down from the plank at the edge of the arena and hurry home because, well, you don't belong there. If you listen to her, you walk away totally unharmed. But if you choose violence, her demeanor instantly shifts from a polite host to a completely invisible assassin.
If you do decide to fight her, you have to rely entirely on environmental clues. Because she turns completely invisible, you literally have to watch the snow on the ground to see where her footprints are appearing. It's usually a good idea to use fire weapons or pyromancies because breaking her poise forces her to become visible again. A really clever trick is to shoot her with arrows so they stick in her invisible character model, acting like floating markers, and you absolutely have to pack blood-red moss clumps. Her scythe inflicts an astonishing 80% bleed buildup per hit. If you aren't clearing that status, you're going to bleed out in seconds. Oh, and players also intentionally target her fluffy tail to sever it and claim the incredibly rare Priscilla's dagger.
And this, right here, brings us to a massive tonal shift in our explainer. Because despite her genuine pleas for peace, players figured out a way to completely industrialize her home. We've established that this is a tragic, beautiful refuge for outcasts. Now let's look at what we gamers actually use it for.
Moving into Section 3, the mechanics of soul farming. Let's leave the rich lore behind for a second and look at the cold, hard mathematics of min-maxing. In Dark Souls, souls are everything. They're your currency and your experience points, and players will do literally anything to maximize how fast they can hoard them. By stacking the symbol of avarice headpiece and the covetous silver serpent ring, players can passively boost their soul yield by an incredible 44%. Both of these items individually increase soul drops by 20%, but here's the secret sauce. They stack multiplicatively. So just by throwing on a ridiculous-looking hat and a specific ring, you're automatically making almost 1.5 times the normal profit for every single enemy you defeat.
But players push this even further by chasing what's called the overkill bonus. This requires massive single-hit damage to trigger an extra payout. If you can manage to deal more than 150% of an enemy's maximum health in one single strike, not a multi-hit combo but one huge devastating hit, the game rewards you with an extra 20% bonus to the souls dropped.
When you combine that gear stack with the overkill bonus, you get a staggering 72.8% total bonus on every single enemy you obliterate. This is the absolute holy grail of soul farming math. If you can find a tight cluster of weak enemies, equip your soul boosting gear, and hit them with a single massive area attack that triggers the overkill bonus on all of them simultaneously, your profits just skyrocket.
Which takes us to Section 4. Exploiting the Painted World. Let's see exactly how players apply this exact mathematical formula to this specific area. Because it turns out, Priscilla's peaceful land features the absolute perfect victims for this. Just steps away from the central bonfire sits the Phalanx. This is a clustered group of enemies that are practically begging to be hit by area of effect spells. There are about 13 of these bizarre spear and shield-wielding blobs clumped tightly together in the main courtyard. Because they are incredibly slow and grouped so densely, they are the ideal target for massive single-hit area damage.
And that brings us to Section 5, our final segment, the Pyromancy Phalanx Farm. This is where the actual strategy comes together to create the highest netting soul farm in the entire game. Players disregard the lore entirely to execute a ruthless, highly optimized loop. This precise 30-second loop allows players to wipe out the Phalanx in a single devastating cast and instantly reset the world to do it all over again. Here is how it works. You spawn at the bonfire, sprint straight out into the courtyard, and before the Phalanx can even react to you being there, you unleash a massive pyromancy like Firestorm or Chaos Storm. Huge pillars of flame erupt from the ground, instantly overkilling the entire group. Then, rather than slowly walking back, you cast a homeward miracle or snap a homeward bone to instantly teleport back to the bonfire, resetting the enemies.
The efficiency here is just absurd. It effectively breaks the game's economy if you dedicate even just an hour to the grind. In a normal playthrough, one quick run nets you nearly 12,000 souls. But in New Game Plus, a harder subsequent playthrough, that yield doubles to roughly 23,500 souls. Because the loop only takes about 30 to 45 seconds to pull off, you can easily squeeze in 100 runs in a single hour.
In New Game Plus, this ruthless optimization can yield up to an astonishing 2.35 million souls in a single hour. It literally allows players to level up indefinitely. That is over 2 million souls generated by repeatedly burning the exact same group of sad outcasts alive over and over and over again. It completely trivializes the game's difficulty curve. So, to wrap up this explainer, I want you to think about the tragic irony of it all. We invade a refuge designed specifically for outcasts, we completely ignore the host's desperate pleas for peace, and we systematically slaughter her subjects by the millions just to watch a number on our screen go up. The lore tells us that the gods were terrified of Priscilla and the abominations hidden inside the Painted World. But honestly, when you look at the cold, calculated mechanics of the Phalanx Soul Farm, it becomes incredibly clear who the most terrifying entity in the Painted World truly is. It's us! Thanks for joining me for this explainer. And hey, the next time you find a peaceful area in a game, maybe think twice before you start doing the math.